Hey guys, it's M, and today we're gonna be talking about beat this game years ago. there's, there's, there's gotta be another script left, right? One of these? Huh? You said no? Fuck. Okay, let's do this. Let's talk about Let It Die. Now, Let It Die is a free-to-play Souls-like on PS4 and PC. Now, there's quite a lot to cover with this game, as this one's more of the quirky uncle out of all the other Souls-likes. I can confidently say there's no other one like this because of the tone, but, you know, it's similar in the fact that there's stamina management, rolling, and all that kind of stuff. This could be a very interesting video, as this game, I wouldn't say it's controversial, but it's a real you love it or you hate it kind of thing. So let's start off with why you might like it. First, the aesthetic and design choices. Arguably the best parts of this game. It's so different and stand out than all the other Souls-likes, like I said before. The weapons, armor, and areas are more grounded in grimy realism than fantasy, which is a breath of fresh air since every other one's like, fight this sky dragon, fight this 8-foot halberd dude, lightning man. In what other game can you fight someone with a ripped-in-half motorcycle or a baseball pitching machine, or run through a destroyed carnival, or modern-day city rooftops? But other than all that, the characters I would have to say also support this different philosophy than Souls-likes. The main hub just has so many interesting people in it. In other Souls-likes, you're surrounded by depressed people having little conniptions, but in Let It Die, you got a gamer, a stripper mushroom lady, death in some shades, an annoying high school girl. Just not the norm for this kind of thing. Other than just being weird, it's clear the environments of this game had some serious love put into them, as there's a lot of cool details you can pick up while running through the map, and they're just really interesting to look at. RPG aspects are a big thing in this game, way more than other Souls-likes, even more than Nioh. There's a lot you can do with your character, to an oddly specific degree. Like if you wanted to make a stealthy suplexer build, you can do that. If you wanted to make a DIY armor set build, that's a thing. You want to make sure your guy gets healed by being poisoned? Go right ahead. In this game, with the right kind of character, it's possible to rock one or even two builds at the same time. If you like RPGs that let you have the perfect build for the endgame and just erase the highest tiers of enemies, this game will have you 100% covered in that department. And while you're looking around for the stuff to make your perfect build, you will be heavily rewarded for exploring every nook and cranny of the map. If you want to go straight to the next level, or floor as they're referred to in this game, you won't really have to worry about wasting your time exploring, as you could find healing items, buffs, collectibles, things to make your weapons and armor better, the whole shebang. I'd say exploration is a big part of this game, so go absolutely nuts if that's your kind of thing. This game has one of the most memorable enemies in any Souls-like, the Jackals. For those who don't know, the Jackals are a group of 4 that are sent to kill you. The introduction sets them up as being a powerful force and successfully scares you away from wanting to fight them, along with them just having a fucking banger of a theme. You can try to fight them this early, but it's highly recommended you don't do that until the endgame, as they are way harder than all the mandatory bosses in this game, including the final one. They'll show up minutes after you've killed every enemy in an area, meaning they can show up anywhere. This makes it so you don't have to worry about being on a time crunch if you're playing normally, but it does keep the constant threat over your head if you want to try to kill everything and loot an area, meaning you better keep it quick if you do that, unless you want these 3 to come and try and body snatch you. Not to mention, the further you get in the game, the stronger they'll become in the sidelines, making it so the entire playthrough, you're gonna want to stay clear of them unless you're properly prepared to kill one, if not all of them. The fighter locker is really unique. The further you go, you unlock better classes and tiers of characters, so you'll have to make another one, which does sound pretty annoying, but in most scenarios, it's pretty cool to see all your previous characters in one spot, showing your progression from Tier 1 Cheem into Tier 5 Chad. You can even send them out to get loot and gear for you, which definitely can save you some time. There are other real cool little aspects to this game too, like when you get a mushroom or a bug, it's obviously gonna be fucking raw! So the buffs it would give you are decreased. So you're probably wondering, how do you cook it? Pull a Monster Hunter and pull a whole cooking spit out of your ass? No! You find a fire or something that's lit and you put the object over it to cook it and make it stronger, which is a real neat little detail. But to make it even cooler, towards the end of the game they take away almost all of the natural fire that's found through the stage. And this may sound unbearable, but this is where they push you to figure out that if you have a fire weapon, you can just cook it yourself, or find a mushroom or something that can make a fiery explosion and put the food in that, which adds a real cool little survival element to the game. The next 2 points I'm going to mention are going to be revisited later, so let's get them out of the way. Mushrooms. Mushrooms in this game are trippy for a word. They usually have really wild and creative effects, and they serve as most of the buffs in this game. Of course, you have the damage up and defense up as you would in any other RPG, but then you have one that's just a straight up grenade, another that's a 50-50 between giving you full health and energy or turning you into a frog, or one that's a fist and then you throw it and it's a missile. Rocket! Yeah, this is a really weird game. Gore-tastics, a big selling point of this game. Gore-tastics are when you do enough damage to drive an invisible fatigue bar, and then you get to do a super over-the-top kill animation, something similar to a fatality. While these are cool, unless you're over-leveled for an area, you're most likely not going to be seeing many of these, due to the fact that you need to land multiple extremely heavy hits without killing the enemy to put them in the state to perform one. But the sheer amount of animations these Gore-tastics have is just impressive, for lack of a better word. There's a unique one for almost every single weapon type in this game, and that's definitely nothing to scoff at, as this game has a lot of weapons, along with the animations themselves actually being pretty crispy. The music. The music in this game is really good. They've gathered a lot of different people to compose the soundtrack for this game, and it absolutely slaps when it's actually playing in the main hub. And whenever I do hear Let It Die music, I feel like I'm coming into a good time. Even though it isn't the more straight up happy songs this game has, like I said earlier, I really do like the Jackals theme. Now, I think that's it for the straight up positives of this game. I do want everyone to keep in mind that this is a free game, which does spare it from some criticism, but unlike in the Warframe review, I don't think that point covers up as much for this game. And I'm sure you can see however much time's left in this video, so buckle up, it's gonna get pretty wild from here. Well, I'm sure that you've noticed in that list of positives, I did not mention the combat or the gameplay. To be fair, after replaying this game, I've noticed there's two fairly different kinds of combat, melee and range. You can go the whole game with one or the other, but since this game has way more melee weapons, enemies tend to drop more melee weapons, and the average player is going to be using melee weapons, let's start off talking about them. I'm gonna be straight up with you. Melee weapons are not great. You know how in Silent Hill, the weapons were meant to feel slow and clunky to show how powerless you were in that situation? I wouldn't say it's to that extent, but they are really clunky and don't feel super satisfying to land. A sentiment which almost everyone who viewed this game has said. Granted, the enemy does stagger back a bit when you hit them, but it feels like it lacks a lot of impact, along with the fact that near the end game or when you first reach new areas, enemies don't take a lot of damage from your attacks, so they feel more like wet slaps. Other than that, there's weird pauses and combos, which I don't understand why that's a thing. You know how when you hit someone in Dark Souls, it's usually guaranteed about 2 slashes with a normal weapon? This game's the same, but I find it weird as they have a special third hit animation for most of these combos, but they don't land unless the enemy's being stupid, so I'm not sure why it's like this. Well, then there's dodging. You're probably wondering why I'm talking about dodging in the melee weapon section, but we're gonna get to that. There's no invincibility frames for dodging, so you're gonna have to be quick on your feet and think ahead. But the thing is, dodging with melee weapons feels really weird in this game. You can dodge after you finish your attacks, which is the norm, but in this game, many of your animations after attacks, your character has to return to a neutral standing position before they can dodge. For example, this is the Bear Fist. This should have one of the fastest dodges in the game, right? Watch this. I'm gonna be mashing the dodge button after I punch. Good lord! I didn't know I was using Smo's fucking hammer. The recovery on these attacks is hot garbage, which leads into combat being a travesty in most cases. Many combat scenarios turn into you just walking back and waiting for an attack, because the end lag's so bad, you can punish them for usually half of their health. But the same thing can happen to you, as in most new areas where the enemies are at equal level to you, if you miss an attack and they start to hit you, you might be losing half of your health. Or if there's more than one, they may just stun lock you and kill you. You may be saying, most Souls-likes have a melee parry, that's always rewarding, right? And the answer to that question is no. Let's use Code Vein and Bloodborne for example. In Code Vein, you hit the parry, you get a flashy, punchy animation that does a lot of damage and looks cool. Bloodborne, you hit a quick visceral stab to the gut, blood spilling everywhere, their controller rumbling, along with a satisfying sound effect before ripping your hand out of the enemy and they fly backwards for massive damage. And Let It Die? You get nothing but a single free hit. No special animation, no big damage, just a cool little tink sound, and if you're lucky, a whole 1, possibly 2 attacks from your weapon. This is illegal. Remember Gortastics, which I said could instantly kill targets and have really good animations? I don't see why these couldn't have been toned down and used as the parry animations. You know how cool it would have been to have all these weapons with their own unique, rewarding, punchy parry animations and giving you an actual good reward for parrying? Why am I always the one that has to think of this stuff? That is such a good idea. Why didn't they think of that? There's no real incentive or tool to push enemies in this game. And someone may be about to say, what about the iron in the bat? God, this dude's stupid. The iron and the bat have easier parries, but they lead to the same scenario of only getting 1 or 2 hits. The only reason those are considered better instead of your hand parries because the parry frames are actually good in more than like a singular frame. Hitting parries multiple times with those weapons isn't hard, but that doesn't really make the mechanic good. Those weapons are just really good at exploiting an option that's otherwise unusable. So long story short, the melee combat in this game forces you to be overly passive unless you're over leveled. There isn't a good way to open and blow up enemies in this game, so you usually just end up doing this backward scuffle until the game gives you an opening to hit them. Now onto the guns. If I had to recommend you use any kind of weapon in this game, I'd recommend the guns. They don't suffer from the same kind of clunkiness as many of the melee weapons do. You may say to yourself, I'll just use them the whole game. They sound perfect, and while they do have less problems than the melee weapons, they have some weird traits about them. They start off with a certain amount of ammo, which for most guns is pretty decent. If you're over level, you can get through many floors, and if you're about the same level as the enemies, you can maybe get through a floor or 2 with 1 gun. But you may be asking, if it starts off with a certain amount of ammo, how do I get more? You don't. Yes, this game decided if you want more bullets, then you're gonna have to just grab an entirely different gun. Like, why isn't there an ammo pouch or something? Weapons have a set amount of durability in this game, which is a point we'll touch on later, so it's not even like you could use the gun forever even if it had infinite bullets. So why do I need like 5 assault rifles to make sure I don't get ass blasted for running out of bullets? Enemy variety is not the best. The cool thing about most Souls-likes is the sheer enemy variety as you go on further in the game. The tubers sport a good 5 cool designs, but you'll mainly be seeing the normal weak fodder ones, along with the fact that only 2 of them really shake up the normal gameplay from you just walking backwards and waiting for them to whiff. Other than that, the only other enemy type is the Screamer, which are about 95% of the enemies in this game. What's a Screamer, you may be asking? Well, a Screamer is a recolored version of your character that gets the exact same weapons and fights the exact same as you, except for them getting a weirdly better dodge than you. So, instead of being excited for newer enemies, you'll be more excited to see what new weapons they're holding or what new clothes they're wearing, which isn't terrible as it is a good way to show off the kind of stuff that you can get, but I must admit I do kinda wish there was more variety in the enemy type department. It's a Souls-like, so what about the bosses? Now, the bosses are pretty cool. There's Cohen, who's a blind brute. His blindness means he won't be able to straight up attack you unless you do something loud like run up to him, or unless he does a scream attack to sense where you are in the room. Jindai is a teleporting, gun-shooting, blob lady thing. Her fights usually lead to a lot of map traversal or just hiding behind pillars to avoid her fire. Gotu is a thing. He's a weird long-tongued bowling ball looking dude who to my surprise has a pretty interesting moveset. Other than the tongue whips, he can roll around, he can even eat your armor or spit out little skeletons to fight you. And then there's U10, who is a Metal Gear Revengeance looking type lady who has a tail blaster and is quite fast, along with the fact that you have to fight her in a small little cage. Probably the weakest out of the first 3 because of her later introduction, but she's pretty cool. And that's it. You may be thinking, oh, it must just be a short game if it only has 4 bosses. No, they just reused them. A lot. You fight Cohen, Jindai, and Gotu about 3 times, and U10 you fight her twice. Granted, Dans, when they get involved, they take a version of the boss's body, and they have slightly modified versions of their movesets, like they get electricity or fire, but it's kind of weird to me they chose to reuse them this many times. Imagine if you were playing Dark Souls and it was just 50 Shades of Gundyr with him getting 1 new attack every once in a while. It is kind of sad after you play this game to a certain point and you see these 4 and go, oh, it's them again for like the 8th time. Yay! Granted, the optional bosses such as the Jackals or the 4 Horsemen are pretty unique, but seeing as you'll most likely not fight them in a normal 40 floor playthrough kind of ruins that point. And since we're talking about bosses, it's not really satisfying to beat them in this game. As you get further in this game and the bosses become a little bit more spongy, you'll react more like, thank God that's over and I don't have to do that again. then that was a cool boss fight. I'd really love to redo that. They don't have any aspects I would say that makes them fun to fight. I think Cohen's gimmick is really good, but it doesn't really make me want to fight him over and over again. The other three are pretty standard. They're not like absolutely horrible boss fights or anything, but if I had the choice, I wouldn't really want to fight them after the 4 mandatory times I have to do so. So the gameplay and base combat don't feel too good in this Souls-like. It's functional, but I wouldn't say it's great. That's a big problem. Now you can say the mushrooms really do punch up the combat as they give some really good buffs, and you're going to be using them for most boss fights, but it looks like cheating. I know that sounds weird, but imagine you're playing Dark Souls 3 and you're fighting Gale. When you beat Gale, it feels like you've overcome a challenge with your skills and reflexes. Dark Souls does have RPG level up mechanics, so it's possible you'll be a bit weaker than expected, but if you play normally, he'll be a challenge no matter what build you're using. Now, if we put Gale and let it die, he would probably have 8,000 times the health, one-shot you with almost every move he has, and is just simply a tier above you. You'd probably say, that's bullshit. But this is where mushrooms come into even the odds. The meta mushrooms let you slow down time, make you invisible so the boss can't see you, 120% damage boosts, and a mushroom that makes you invincible. Now, if the boss can't hurt, see, or even move fast enough to hit you, it's pretty much seeing if you can do enough damage before the buff runs off and they kill you. So then what the fuck is the point of the boss fight?
Understand what's going on here.
Like honestly, they could have just put a punching bag damage check where the bosses are. The main way to fight bosses in this game is to literally stop them from doing anything while you'll just wail on them with your build to 1 or 2 shot them. You're practically just hitting meat walls that look like bosses at that point. And some will say, well, you don't need to be mushrooms, you can beat them with pure skill. Unless you're over leveled, you're going to need mushrooms. Otherwise, you're going to be practically doing no damage and be in danger of being one-tapped constantly. There's no reason other than to cripple yourself to not bring mushrooms, because you're just making it 80 times harder by not gimmicking them out the same way they're gimmicking you. For our last main gameplay pieces, let's talk about death metals, the economy, durability, difficulty spikes, and the main RPG aspects of looting. Then we'll wrap it up with our conclusion. These are probably my least favorite aspects of the game. First, let's talk about looting. As I said, this game will reward you for looking around everywhere in the environments, and they also have a really immersive feel to them, but you'll have to do it so many times that the charm is going to quickly run out for you, or at least it did for me. On a normal playthrough, you're going to be so underpowered and weak if you don't grind, you'll have to run through the same area multiple times to get what you want. Some materials and weapon blueprints only drop from bosses as well, so the already strained boss count is going to come back and be fucking irritating as you have to beat them multiple times for a chance to get a single material, which most times you'll need more than one of. You would think this is how the creators get their money, but no, not really. On release, you couldn't buy materials from anywhere, but now they have a machine called the Hernia that sells random materials for premium currency or just normal coins. Either or, they don't let you choose what's inside the machine, so they could be selling stuff completely worthless to you even if you do whip out the wallet. So, really, it's just annoying padding. This game doesn't have too many levels. The main story only has about 40, but they like to jack up the difficulty on you so many times that you're forced to grind, and the grind is about 3/4 of the game. I can't think of any other Souls like I've played where they've practically forced you to grind this much. And some people may like this to an extent, but for me, it's a little bit of a turnoff. Difficulty. I know this is a Souls-like, so saying, why is this hard? Is like saying, why does this milk taste like milk? But it's more than that. Every 10 floors, you're going to be crippled in the damage and health department. You may just think it's because the enemies get better weaponry than you, but it's more than that. Remember how earlier I had mentioned there are multiple tiers of characters? To unlock these tiers of characters for yourself, you're going to have to beat a certain boss or pass a certain floor to unlock the next tier of fighters, just to be on the same tier as the enemies you're fighting on the floor you've just reached. Because when you hit the next 10 floors, all the enemies are automatically automatically bumped up to the next tier. So along with them just having better stuff than you, it's a painful slog to deal with them because your character is practically 20 levels under theirs. Durability. Everything in this game has durability, and it's not unintrusive. When I mentioned build variety, quite a few builds have parts specifically just to make sure the weapons don't break so damn fast. You'll take out a few enemies and go, huh, my durability bar seems to be lacking. Luckily for the gun master race, you're more likely to run out of bullets than just to have your gun straight up break on you. But melee weapons, they can take out a good group of enemies before breaking, depending on the fact that you don't scrape a wall or the ground mid combo, since that also takes durabilities. Then you might just be left in a horrible situation where your weapon breaks. Now armor, luckily, isn't as sensitive in certain cases. If you run into a bullet tuber and they begin shooting you, even though you may be taking minimal damage, your armor's durability will get shredded. Same goes for if you step in fire. It doesn't seem to matter how much damage you take, it still significantly ticks off of your durability bar. When you're playing normally, it's not impossible to have both your weapons and armor break while you're looking to reach the next possible elevator. It's probably one of the most tense moments you can have in a video game, and I feel like it's really cool that it adds this little horror game effect at times, but since the penalty for dying is really steep in this game, it's not a situation you want to find yourself in regardless. I really think the main problem is they made decals to get better weapon and armor durability as if they know it's terrible on default. I feel like they just should have made an update to make the durability on base better, but seeing how old this game is and they haven't done it already, I doubt they care. The economy of the game, or as it should be known as, dog shit. Let me explain. Everything in this game costs money. You want to build the blueprint that you just found? Money. You want to build weapons to travel further? Money. Armor to travel further? Money. Make a higher tier character? Money. Traveling? Money.
Money, 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 money. We can't keep doing this.
It wouldn't be so bad if they didn't price gouge you for every single thing you need, along with the fact that enemies drop like 2 cents when you kill them. As the weapons and armor level up in this game, the price to build them goes dramatically up. So it's not uncommon to buy a whole set of armor and weapons and then just not be able to afford the elevator to get to the floor you're trying to go to. It's really just the land of inconvenience. Along with all of that, like I said earlier, weapon durability is bad, so you're most likely going to need to buy stuff in pairs. All they'd have to do is bring the price down for the weapons and armor. They could probably even keep the traveling cost and everything else you have to buy if they did that. But whatever I'm saying isn't going to happen. There will be times where you're just going to be broke, and then you will have to spend 30 minutes trying to get money just so you can get to a floor to progress in the story. Now on to death medals. Death medals and express tickets. The straight up worst parts of the game for me. This will come full circle, so bear with me. When you die in this game, they have an interesting mechanic. Either you die and spend a death medal, which is the premium currency, or you just die and you have to use another character. Yes, this game makes you pay for lives, which I think is inherently pretty grimy, but let's go with the free-to-play option. If you straight up die, your body will be reanimated as an enemy, and you'll have to send another character to bring them back by killing them. This, in theory, is a cool mechanic, but usually, it's going to be your strongest character that you send up there. And seeing as you've died, you've obviously been having problems with this floor regardless, so you may end up dying trying to save them and just lose 2 characters. Or you can spend some coins to get them back. The problem is, in most scenarios, you'll be so high up, you might not even be able to hold the max amount of coins required to buy them back. Also, since your characters have died all the way up there, they couldn't bring any of the coins that they found back down. So you've officially gained nothing and lost everything. So obviously, the best and most efficient way to avoid both of these scenarios is to just use real money and buy some death medals. This gives people incentive to actually spend real money on the game. I don't like the fact that it's tied to lives, but since it's a free-to-play, I guess I can't fully hate it. But then, I guess people weren't buying enough, so they added another premium currency, the Express Pass. Sick of having to spend $1 million to get to places? Just buy this other subscription service and you'll just be better than the poor people. Instead of having to use that filthy poor people elevator, you get a nice classy elevator with no cost to travel and a cute lady inside. Ooh. Use it enough and she may even start to like you.
You have a unique smell. It's a nice smell.
Huh? Now your inventory is even bigger for some reason and you can carry more. Now if you get raided from the TDM, you won't lose as much because you have our insurance. Getting your characters back costs less. Free decals every single day you log in as one of our members. Why on earth would you want to be poor and miss out on all of the golden opportunities we can bring you? This is annoying. As I had said, the economy in this game is ass, so not having to use coins to travel anywhere will save you so much grinding time. The devs even tease you as if you walk up to the door and you don't have the premium pass, the door slightly opens and the lady goes like,
"Sorry, I don't serve poor degenerates."
and then closes the fuck. I can almost bet both of these elevators were in development at the same time, and one was codenamed Paycheck and then the other one was called Poor People. But back onto death medals. As on release, they didn't think just these being lives were enough. They started adding special variants of armor. These are versions of the normal armor with cool visual effects or some special coloring to them. These cost a lot of death medals. The hernia was added and they started selling items that can be bought with death medals. You want to expand your storage because it starts off pathetically small? Death medals. Want more money? Exchange your death medals for coins, which I would not recommend as the exchange rate is fucking atrocious. You're going to be straight up stunted unless you use death medals or the Express Pass premium currency in this game. Unlike Warframe where you can legitly do everything pretty much the same way a paid player would, you're going to just be straight up worse than someone who's putting down cash for this game. Let alone, I don't think these death medal prices are cheap in themselves. I hate this whole aspect of the game if it wasn't fairly obvious. You can pretty much pay to win with death medals since they are the lives of this Souls-like game. That was a lot of words, but I finally feel like I covered everything, so what's the conclusion? Well, it's a free game, so you're not losing anything by picking it up and giving it a try, but I'm gonna preface that with this. If you're not interested in finishing this game after a few days, or if those negatives I listed really stand out and would be a problem for you, the game might just not be for you. It clearly wasn't designed with everybody in mind, and it's a very hardcore sort of game that doesn't pull any punches. But for that same reason, it's why even after all this time since release and all the flaws that I've mentioned, it still has a loyal cult following. On the other hand, if you actually do want a super hardcore immersive Souls-like, then this might be the game for you. I've beaten the entire base game, and I had to start replaying it for footage for this video, but even though I was mentally prepared to hate it, I didn't. Well, not entirely anyway. One big thing this game does have going for it is you'll never really run out of things to do, as this is an infinite grind, and if you do enjoy that sort of thing, along with all the other good qualities I pointed out, I do believe it can really carry it beyond a lot of its lows. I'm not saying that you won't notice them. Hell, even thinking back, I feel somewhat masochistic for even beating the first 40 floors, but if you were to ask me how to personally enjoy this game, play it for a bit, and if you don't like it or you get annoyed at some of its mechanics, there's nothing stopping you from putting it down and picking it up a few weeks, months, or years later if something catches your interest about it again. That's pretty much how I ended up completing it. Multiple times of addiction, and then others of complete uninterest. And if you end up a super hardcore fan after the first 40 floors, don't worry, because there's another 300 or so floors where you can fully max out and optimize your builds and weapons. As a whole, I'd say a lot of aspects of this game feel really cool, but the execution was sloppy and some of it was just plain predatory. If they were to make a Let It Die 2, I hope they just make it a $50 experience and take out all, if not most of the corporate money squeezing tactics out of it, and I would be extremely interested. But as for now, Let It Die is an okay game, and it stands out against its peers as being quite a quirky game. Not the best, not the worst, but an okay game. And definitely one of the most interesting free games on PlayStation 4 right now. But hey, that's just my opinion. And since this game's free, I'd be surprised if a lot of you haven't played it already or haven't beaten the first 40 floors. I'm curious on your thoughts on this game, and as always, I'll gladly discuss with any of you guys in the comments. This has been a long video, so with that, I'm M. Thank you for watching, and I am out.